I think the greatest threat to our politics isn't whether people vote for one party or another. It's just people becoming so disillusioned that they don't want to engage in the system as at all.
The general outlook of a Muslim that goes into politics is that they're a sellout.
So many people feel politics, it's a whole game, there's no use in engaging. I understand that feeling. But also it's been an experience in understanding very intimately that the people who make the decisions to do harm, they're not disengaging from our politics. No, if anything, they're engaging more in our politics. When you and me disengage, Jaafar, then the only people playing the game on the inside are the people who don't want what's best for our communities. And I think it's important that some of us are on the inside so that we can play a little bit of defense and sometimes play a little bit of offense. I think it's really interesting for us to consider, look at what happened in the Zohran Mamdani experience. He won, and now the party has to negotiate with him. The leaders of the Democratic Party can't ignore him.
If we're going to fast forward now to you winning that seat, what's that first phone call to your grandmother going to be like?
It's changed the things that she prays about. I don't know if she is even aware of just how big that permission that she gave me when she was like, I want you to be there, like, you don't got to come back and live with me. I don't think she connects that to this prayer that she's giving me that I win this election, but it's so directly connected in my mind and my experience. And so
Welcome aboard Middle East
والمتوجهة إلى طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب مدينة القدس العربية.
Abbas, welcome to Not From Here. The way we start the show off is you introducing yourself. I want you to introduce yourself in the way that you see yourself. So when Abbas looks in the mirror, who is that person?
Get right into it.
Get right into it.
It's such a pleasure to be on with you, Jaafar. I look in the mirror and I see my grandmother's grandson. My grandmother is over 90 years old. She lives now in South Lebanon, and she's probably the most important person in my life to me. And a lot of my own sense of identity comes from the bond that I have with her. Hajj Zuhair and Saf Kareem, very special person. That's first and foremost what I think of when I think of who I am. I'm also someone who is from this community, this Dearborn community that we grew up in all of its beauty, its support, its joy, its struggles. I very much think of myself as someone from here. I also am someone who is more than anything committed to work that helps. And so in every part of my career, in every part of my personal life, I'm a helper. And I think that that's a very critical part of how I think of myself, even as a leader, is someone who's trying to help. So my name is Abbas Alawieh. I'm from here, and I'm trying to help.
You know that over the 100 plus conversations that I've had on the show, a lot of people identified as son, brother, people who identify as son, tend to have very strong ties with their parents or with their siblings if they say brother or sister. But a grandson, I never got yet. So what is it about your grandmother that's so important in your life?
Yeah, my grandmother, the first 6 years of my life were spent in Lebanon. Before we immigrated here, we lived in a neighborhood in Lebanon called Hayy Silum in Dahi. And our building was immediately in front of my grandmother's building. Both my mom and dad worked full time, and so my grandmother was in a lot of ways our primary caretaker. We probably spent more nights at her apartment than we did at our own. So, she always tells the story of usually you'd want to sleep next to my grandmother, and my sister would sleep on one side and I would sleep on the other. And if she happened to be facing my sister's direction and hugging her, I would be upset. And I'd say, why not my side? If she happened to be facing my side, it would be the same complaint. And of course, leaving Lebanon at the age of 6, when we immigrated here to a gorgeous community of family members on my mom's side and a gorgeous, broader Dearborn community, the experience, of course, was one of coming to a place of support, of opportunity. And I think oftentimes the pressure to talk about our immigrant experience as you were from somewhere really hard or bad, and now, alhamdulillah, you're somewhere good. For me, we grew up my first 6 years in this neighborhood I'm describing in Hayy Sillum, where I'm from is really good. Where I'm from is love, the love of my grandmother. And being separated from her at an early age was something that I think defined a lot of how I think about myself, how I think about the immigrant experience. I spent most of my life wishing that she could be here. The choices that I made about what I would do when I grow up, a lot of them in my mind were trying to find my way back to her. And I got to tell you a little bit more about that too, because she's someone who, I believe in this concept of soulmate, not just as a romantic concept, but as, our souls are on the same page with one another. We can be in the same room, don't have to say a single word, but we feel a certain love for one another. That's how I feel when I'm with my grandmother, sitting on the porch there, the slayha next to where she mainly sits in the house. You don't gotta say many words. It's just the love is felt. Her presence in my life is really critical to my identity.
How does that relationship evolve when you leave? Because I don't think too many of us have that many memories before 6 years old. So you leave when you're 6, but that love still plays a very important part of your life. So I'm guessing that relationship would have had to evolve after you left.
So when we came here, my parents, maybe out of kindness, maybe out of a certain wanting to care for our feelings, maybe it was just something they said one day when I was crying a lot about leaving Lebanon, and they thought it would pacify me. They said, "Don't worry, we're going for a month. We'll be back." And so for me, when we came here and all of the really incredible parts of my own story started to unfold, like I got to go to Laurie Elementary School and then Laurie Middle School. I got to make friends and get to hang out with my cousins growing up in East Dearborn. There was something that stuck with me about, but we're supposed to be going back. And did we abandon my grandmother? And I remember I had a distinct urge I always had this urge, I want to go back and live with her, right? And the first big purchase we made as a family, when we were living just a few houses down from Alamir, my parents bought a treadmill for us to exercise on, and they put it in the basement. And I remember I threw a fit. I was so sad. I thought, how could you buy this anchor and put it in our basement? This won't fit in a suitcase. We got to go back and live with my grandmother. That was the specific feeling that I had, and her urging of me growing up was, I want you to come back and live with me. And when I became an adult, I wanted that. I wanted to go back and live with her. And so even my own studies, I studied public health, global health, went to the University of Michigan, and then I moved out to Washington to work in global health after doing some research abroad at the World Health Organization in Europe, and after doing research in Lebanon on refugee health. Part of my hope secretly was, I'm going to find my way back to my grandmother. Maybe I'll work at some NGO or something to help do the work that I want to do, but also to live with her. And, it was really, after living in DC and working on a global health USAID project, when I got a call from her, she told me she wants me to go live with her my whole life. And I got a call from her. I remember, so my sister, Fadwa Hamoud, was serving on the school board at the time. And my grandmother was watching. This was during Trump's first presidency. She was, I guess, watching TV. And she called me. She said, "Abbas, there's this orange guy on my TV. He's saying all kinds of things this isn't good. But sounds like they need help over there in America. I know your sister does politics. I don't want you to come back and live with me anymore. It's hard here, and America needs help. I need you to, if you make that country better, you'll be helping me. I don't want you to come back and live with me." And what that did for me is it changed, not in the immediate moment, okay, now I want to go and work on Capitol Hill, which is what I ended up doing, work in Congress. But it just changed my outlook. It changed my disposition. It made me feel like, okay, yes, I'm from here and I'm from there. but it's okay that I'm totally here. And she gave me a permission that I didn't know that I needed.
You always thought that you should go back.
Even if temporarily, I mean, regardless of space, I always thought that I needed to be with her, specifically because of her love, of her story. She's someone who grew up as a farmer, like a lot of our parents did, someone who grew up and experienced a lot of pain, of violence. And she's someone who is genuinely hilarious to be around. So I love being around her, and that's why I try to go back and visit all the time. I was just there, my wife and I, in October. We visited. My wife doesn't speak any Arabic at all. She'll kill me for saying that, but she speaks a little bit of Arabic. My grandmother doesn't speak any English at all. But the real test was, were they going to be able to understand each other, understand each other's humor? Because both of them are actually hilarious. By the end of it, they fell in love with one another and they were laughing at each other's jokes. And I think I did a good job interpreting.
What is it about your grandmother now, as a grown-up, Abbas, and looking back and reflecting, what is it about her that makes you that connected to her? Because this is not your typical connection to your grandmother, obviously. You know, most people don't have that type of connection to their grandmother.
Yeah. To me, a lot of my political work is about helping, okay? And a lot of my work really has been trying to engage with a system that I know is capable of immense good. I know, as a kid who grew up in this community, and, you know, thank God both my parents worked day and night to provide for us. And thank God we live in a country where we were able to get insurance from the government, health insurance from the government, Medicaid. We were able to get assistance in other forms, food assistance or otherwise, when we needed it, right? But I also know that this country that we belong to, that we love, is capable of doing a lot of harm. And so for me, understanding that when our country, for example, prioritizes a lot of money for bombs as opposed to for feeding people who need to be fed here, to me, the people on the receiving end of those bombs, they're not theoretical to me. The people on the receiving end of those bombs are my grandmother. Actually, it's her. She lives in South Lebanon. She's on the receiving end of those bombs. And my connection to her, my understanding of how fundamentally human she is, how the way that she exists in the world, the things that her hands know how to do in terms of taking care of the land or making the food that would nourish our bodies. My understanding of her humanity is fundamental to my understanding of why it's important that we make decisions as governments, as people that try to help rather than hurt. Because I think one of the things that gets lost in our national politics, which is where I've done a lot of my work, is we're not really connected to the people on the other end of this thing, on the other end of the bombs that we might be sending. To me, my connection with my grandmother, because I know how tender her heart is, that's how tender I know a lot of grandmothers' hearts are, whether they're abroad or whether they're right here in Metro Detroit and need the help and instead are being ignored or left behind by our government. Both grandmothers, over there and over here, deserve our utmost respect and our service. They deserve for us to be in service to them. That's the connection for my grandmother.
If you or someone you know is a licensed insurance agent here in Michigan, I need you to listen very closely. Nasser Insurance Agency is hiring licensed insurance agents right now, and this isn't your typical insurance job. They're expanding and they're growing fast, and they're willing to pay 15% commission for the right people. If you're licensed in personal lines or PNC, this is the opportunity that you've been looking for. Contact Nasser Insurance Agency. All the information to do that is in the description of this episode. You need to know this. If you got in a car accident and you got injured, most probably the insurance company that you're dealing with is trying to lowball you and not pay what it's supposed to. And most probably you're not going to be compensated in the right way if you don't have the right type of help by your side. So here's what I want from you. If you're injured and you feel like you're not being compensated by the insurance companies, contact Amer Ghaleb that has been doing this for decades. He's helped countless people get the money that they deserve from the insurance companies. You don't have to settle for less when people like Amer Ghaleb are in business. And remember that he doesn't get paid until you do. And all the information to contact Amer is in the description of this episode. We tend to put strain on our body that we don't even realize. From the hard work that you do, whether it's labor or sitting on the desk, it takes a toll on your body, whether you feel it or not. And one of the best ways to relieve that type of stress on your body so that it doesn't become a bigger problem down the line is massage and therapy. Thrive Physical Therapy provides numerous different therapies and cupping methods to make sure that your body stays at 100%. And wherever you're listening to this right now, click the link in the description of this episode to book your first session with them today. And now, let's get back to the show. You feel like the people in charge here are not connected to the people that are on the other side of their plans?
I think that's true.
Do you think, though, it would change if they were actually connected? Or would the plan still be the same? And the broader interests of whatever they have in mind?
Well, I think you have to look at how politics is done in our country and what disconnects a person from being that family member who's connected to the humanity of their sibling, their mom, their dad, their grandmother. What takes them from being that person to being the person who is, in a lot of instances, heartless, making heartless decisions, intentionally harming people for political gain? Where does the difference happen? And in my experience in politics, really the difference that takes the heart away from our politics is how money functions in our politics. Because ultimately, any person who runs for office, okay, let's say you run for office and you get the seat, okay, and you're going to make a tough decision because of how money functions in our politics. And it's not just me and you deciding, okay, we're going to give $5 to a member of Congress we love, like Rashida Tlaib, for example, right? That's not how most of the money in politics works. Most of the money in politics is hard to track. It's like these multinational, like giant corporations, oftentimes, that have very specific interests that aren't necessarily about how to help the most people, but how to make the most money. And they pour money into politics, okay? And, you know, in our system, they have the right to go and try and make money. But the government has the responsibility to take care of the people's interests over the profit. What ends up happening is a lot of the leaders in these elected positions, instead of doing the thing that's right, the thing that's connected to that love that for people, they do the thing that keeps them in the seat, because the big money is breathing down their neck when they're about to take a big vote. You know, either you help people or you help the company make a lot more money. Because they think, okay, it'd be better for me to be in this seat than not be in this seat, I'll take the vote to help the people keep making more money. And they forget about the people. And so they're more tied up in the game of politics and the way that money is influencing them in that game, rather than the serious responsibility of public service. And I think the way that we change that is we run campaigns in our country. We do politics in a way that says, I'm taking money for this political work, because you have to have money to run a campaign. I'm taking money only from real people that I can look in the eyes and be accountable to. Because the vast majority of the money in this game is not from real people. It's from the giant interests, the open AIs of the world, the APACs of the world. Those people have specific interests. They're making a lot of money off of every additional bomb that drops, every additional barrier that's put in the way of someone who is just trying to provide for their family and has to be charged another fee just to exist, right? Those people are making money off of that. And so I think in our politics, we need fighters who are accountable to people first and foremost. Where it gets lost is when the money comes in.
But do you think they all go into politics for public service in the first place, and then the money just corrupts it? Or do they typically think of the money before going in? Because you said you worked in Congress, right?
Yeah.
So you have that. Because Rashida was talking about that.
Yeah.
She was saying that these people in Congress buy stocks in these weapons companies. And when wars happen, the stock of these companies goes up, thus making the people in Congress more rich. So, but I was wondering if they go into it knowing that that's the game and that's the game that they want to play, or is it like a public service thing? in general?
Yeah. I mean, I think if I had to guess, and God knows what any one person's intention is, but I think the vast majority of people who go into politics probably are, get into it for the right reasons. But I've had conversations with members of Congress who, when I was working in Congress, I started as a policy advisor to Congressman Andy Levin. Then I worked my way up and was Rashida's legislative director, Congresswoman Tlaib, and was a chief of staff to Congresswoman Cori Bush. And so the conversations that I've been able to have are the conversations that are behind the scenes, the conversations when a member of Congress isn't necessarily buttoned up and ready for the camera. They're, they have their feet up and it's 2 a.m. and the vote still hasn't happened yet. When you get the real truth, during those moments, they'll tell you, yeah, of course I'm with the Palestinians, but they'll vote, they'll spend money to get me out of my seat, so I have to vote for the weapons. I've had things like that said to me explicitly, not just by one member of Congress or two, but by several. And so us understanding that as regular, everyday people, okay, the show that we're seeing on TV about what's happening in our politics is a show, and it's orchestrated by, not orchestrated by, but it's sort of disproportionately impacted by how money is moving in our politics. And it's not just the issue of Israel and Palestine, for example, right? Right now, for example, we're seeing a lot of activity around AI, and we're about to see more money from AI companies, right? And big tech companies that want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that our governments, our state government, our local governments, our national government, our federal government, don't make any laws that try to put any guardrails around anything to do with AI. They want to be unregulated. They want to just be able to do everything without any kind of limitations about how we protect people, how we protect, for example, our elders who are now being subjected to more and more scams from AI and are losing more and more money, and we have to protect them, but we can't make laws against it because you'll get voted out of your seat because the AI company, the big tech companies are spending money. So I think what we end up losing just as regular everyday people is how much of what's happening in our politics is determined by these big companies spending money in our politics.
One thing that I think about a lot is Muslims that go into politics, and the general outlook of a Muslim that goes into politics is that they're a sellout. Or an Arab that goes into politics is that they're a sellout. And I think a lot of people have that way of thinking, is that, okay, he's saying good stuff, as soon as he's there or she's there, everything changes, and then it becomes corrupt. And then even if he's with his family and he says that, for example, he's with the Palestinian cause, outwardly he'll say, you know what, I'm for the weapons.
I think the experience of being in politics has opened my eyes to just how real it is that so many people feel like, the word is disillusioned, like they're sick of it. Politics, it's a whole game. What do we get from it? There's no use engaging. I understand that feeling. I feel like that a lot of the time. Knowing everything that I know about politics, of course I feel that way. But also it's been an experience in understanding very intimately that the people who make the decisions about to do harm to our communities, the people who make decisions to make it harder to get health care, people who make the decisions to always raise our electricity bills, the people who make the decisions to, you name the issue, like give money to, the giant corporation that's trying to do more AI rather than like fix our roads, right? Those people, they're not disengaging from our politics. No, if anything, they're engaging more in our politics. And so for those of us who want healthcare, for those of us who want to take care of our elders, for those of us who want better roads, we live in the richest country in the world and somehow we don't have adequate roads, we should be engaging too. And for me, I always had this question, right? I had this question of, is it worth engaging? And I learned through my experience in Congress especially that it really matters when people of diverse backgrounds, including people who are Arab and Muslim, like myself, are in the seat or are working for the people in the seat. I remember a specific example when I was working for Congressman Andy Levin. Congressman Levin has a really big population of Chaldean Americans in his district. Now, at the time during the first Trump presidency, Trump was deporting a good group, or a sizable group of Chaldean Americans, many of whom had never been to Iraq where they were being deported to. One of the people that they deported while we were trying to help him was a man named Jimmy El-Dawood. Jimmy El-Dawood was someone who lived and he was homeless. He lived with bipolar schizophrenia. He lived with diabetes, and he was picked up, just like how we're seeing people picked up now by ICE. He was picked up in that way and deported to Iraq, and he had never been there. He'd been there maybe until he was 1 year old, and then they were refugees, his family. He didn't know any Arabic. There was a video that went viral at the time of him on the side of a road saying, "Hey, I'm in Iraq. They sent me here. I don't know where I am. I need help." This was someone who needed help, not abduction. He needed help, not to be deported. Someone who needed help, who he spent most of his life here in this country. And he was deported, and we were worried. We said, this isn't someone who can survive on his own. He has diabetes. He needs access to his medicine. He has bipolar schizophrenia. He ended up dying, just like we thought might happen. And so in that moment, when Jimmy El-Dawood passed, after his video had gone viral and it was a national story, was reported on everywhere from the New York Times on down, in that moment, I was just a congressional worker. I was someone who was doing my job, writing bills. I had written the bill to stop the deportations of Iraqis. We made it a bipartisan bill. We worked with John Molinar, who is a Republican here that represents Mid-Michigan in Washington. I was doing that work, and the person whose case I was working on, Jimmy, died over there. And so what could I do? Did it matter that I was on the inside? And I think in that moment, it mattered, because what I was able to do for Jimmy and Jimmy's family was, we couldn't bring him back alive, which that's what we were trying to do. But we asked his family, my boss at the time, Andy, asked his family, what can I do to help? And they said, can you please just bring back his remains so that we can bury him with dignity? And so the way we were able to do that is because I had the Arabic language, because I had the connections at the State Department and Customs and Border Patrol, and because I could manage good relationships and stay up till 2, 3 a.m. Talking to the priest that was over there and his lawyer over there and the caseworkers who were on the ground. We did a very difficult thing and managed to bring Jimmy El-Dawood's body back so that he could be buried here in Sterling Heights. And what that did for his family was restore some basic level of human decency in a system where when ICE comes up and abducts someone who needs help rather than a helping hand and deports them to their death abroad, that system is cruel. It should not be that way. And so, am I a sellout for being in the system and bringing Jimmy El-Dawood's body back? No. I'm proud of that work. I'm proud of the work that we do when we're on the inside of any government system to help people, because the role of any government should be to advance the common cause, to help people, right? And so for me, I know, Jaafar, you can ask, my roommate at the time, Ali Abazid is the health director. You might know him. Haram, he didn't sleep 2, 3 a.m. He heard me yelling on the phone. You can ask him, right? Would we have been able to bring back Jimmy's body if Abbas wasn't a legislative assistant in the United States Congress at that time? I know the answer would have been no. But that's the difference, is when we are engaging with the system, there is a lot of good that we can do, and there's a lot of harm that we can try to lessen. I think trying to lessen that harm is an honorable thing for us to do.
Where did it come from, though? Where did this type of distrust in Muslims going or Arabs going into government happen? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
Because I have a few theories. First, Number one, I think that a lot of us are used to the political systems back home. And the political systems back home are not friendly. You need to be very well connected to get any type of paperwork done at all. So there's really no trust abroad. So coming here and seeing your neighbor that his family just came from the Middle East going into politics, I think on a subconscious level, our brain thinks, yeah, same thing. This is the same thing's going to happen. We just know the person in politics here.
I think there's probably not one right answer, but I want to pick up on the point that you're making because it's true. Maybe in a lot of countries around the world, it's not about what you can do or what you know, it's about who you know. And you'll never get into politics unless you know someone or you happen to be well connected or born into a certain level of privilege. The reality and the beauty about our political system here in our country is that it's actually not a mystery for how to get involved. Our political system rewards people who show up. Our political system rewards people who vote. Our political system rewards leaders who have a lot of people vote for them, right? And so the thing about our political system, and right now I'm running for state senate here in this area, Dearborn Heights, Allen Park, Melvindale, Taylor, a part of Warrendale. The thing about our political system is, I think part of what we have to do is, those of us who are in politics, part of our responsibility is not hide the secrets of like, okay, I'm in politics, I'm not gonna tell you how I got there. We have to share it with our community to say it's not a mystery. Actually, the way to do it is, you wanna get into politics, there's three things you gotta do. You gotta knock doors. It's doors. You gotta raise money, dollars, so that people know who your name is. And the third thing is you got to increase your people need to know your name, right? So profile, doors, dollars. Profile, doors, dollars. That's really it. And so for me, how I got my start in politics, when my grandmother gave me that permission, she said, "You're okay, stay over there." At the time, my boss on the USAID project I was working on, he said, Abbas, back in the 80s, I was a chief of staff on Capitol Hill to this Congressman, Sander Levin. I know Sander Levin. His brother is Carl Levin. He was a senator here in Michigan. Said, Sander's son, Andy, is running for Congress, and he's looking for a volunteer. Do you think you'd want to volunteer with him? I said, well, my grandma just said it's okay for me to be here. So yeah. I didn't tell him that part, but I was opened up to an opportunity like that. And how did I get into politics? I found out that Andy Levin is running for Congress, and I just started showing up. I showed up to his campaign office. I was living in D.C. at the time. I would buy a ticket 3 times a month and just show up to his campaign office. He'd be like, don't you live in Washington? But I was so excited about the opportunity to get engaged that I would just be like, yeah, I'm here visiting family. Listen, are we knocking doors today? Is that what we're doing? What do you need help with? Do you need me to help you with your scheduling? Do you need me, and so it's not a mystery how to succeed in politics. You have to run winning campaigns. The way to run a winning campaign is the doors, the dollars, the profile, and there's specific functions that we can get trained in. We can get trained in how to do the communications for a campaign, how to engage with the media, the traditional media and the social media and the new media. We can get trained in the organizing, how to knock the doors and make the phone calls to get our idea out about the things that we think are important for how to change our country and our communities. We can get trained in the operations of how to file a committee, how to make sure to manage the bank account and the budget to make sure that all the bills can get paid. We can train people in any of these things, in the policy, how to identify the opportunities in our politics. It's not a mystery. We just have to, those of us who are stepping up to run for office, we have to stop doing the thing of, okay, now it's about me. I'm the leader. No. If I get into any seat, state senate seat or otherwise, and I don't bring a whole bunch of people with me, I will have failed. And so to go back to answer your question, I think part of the problem is a lot of us don't know that the work of politics is not a predetermined game. It's there for us to take that power and give it to our community if we get trained in how to do that. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with this campaign.
I have a couple more. A lot of people's relationship with the state here is they're being surveilled. They're being stopped at the airport. People in authority, whether it's law enforcement or at the airport, for example, look the same, you know? So it's weird because even people that are police officers that go into like the police academy and stuff, some people will still look at them and be like, sellouts, right? Because I think the surveillance thing, especially after 9/11, was a shock and like a trauma. Now it's like a trauma response to a lot of people. I think that it could be from there. People don't believe that the system allows integrity. Also, you know, so they don't think that they'll allow you to win and be in these positions to change unless you sell out to the system. So if they see Abbas winning, Abbas moving things around, you're just explaining how you would do it. But in people's eyes, they're like, this is a corrupt country. So they corrupted Abbas and now he's getting his way. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. I see, like, I see why people would think that.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, I think, to me, I know too many good people in politics, and I know too many good people in our communities who are interested in the work of pooling our resources together and engaging with our political system to do some good, to be stuck in that cynicism. Because when I know someone like Rashida Tlaib, who our community has seen, you know, the same questions probably were asked of Rashida. Will she go to Congress and change her position on some of the core issues that many people here in this community care about, like Palestine, for example? Do we think Rashida has sold out on Palestine?
No.
I think that's a really clear example of the kind of truth teller in our politics who is going to go in and not just say the thing that gets the least pressure put on them, or just try and say the thing that sounds good, but who's going to go in and try and do the right thing. And I think we have more and more people in our politics, not just Rashida, more and more people in our politics across the country, of people who are going in and saying, hey, I'm not just going to go in and try and keep the seat for me. I'm going to go in and tell the truth about what's happening. Jamal Bowman is an example of that, for example, in New York. Cori Bush is an example of that in St. Louis. Cori Bush was the member of Congress that I worked for. She came out of St. Louis. The other person that I mentioned, Jamal Bowman, congressman out of New York. In his last election, in her last election, it was the most money ever spent in a congressional race. His was number one and hers number two, to get them out of Congress because they were fighting for regular everyday people and because they stood up for the human dignity of all people, including Palestinians. So to me, look at the example of Jamal Bowman. Look at the example of Cori Bush. Those are people who said the truth, even if it cost them their job. Now Cori Bush is running again. Hopefully she beats the other guy and gets back in there. But what that's done is now there are tens of Cori Bushes across the country running on the idea that they're going to tell their communities the truth, regardless of what the inside game being played is. I like to think I'm one of those people. I'm running to tell our community the truth about what is happening in our political system and what isn't. I'm running to be a reliable narrator for our community about what is possible and what we can achieve, not just the slogan of, hey, I wish I could do something, but no, here's tangibly what I can do right now. I know too many good people in politics, too many good people on Capitol Hill, too many good people who work in our local governments here in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights and Taylor and Allen Park, too many good people for us to give up on those people and say they can't do anything for me. What about when you lose your job and you need unemployment insurance? Would it be helpful to you to have a state Senate office who can advocate on your behalf with the state to make sure you get what you need? I think so. What about when you get kicked off of your Medicaid and you need an advocate on the inside in government to make sure that you get your health care back so that you can afford your cancer treatment? Would it be helpful to you to have a state senator who can advocate with the government and make sure you get what you need? I think so. I think when we make our politics just about being right rather than doing right and helping people, we fall into the mistake of giving up on our system. There's a lot for our system, or there's a lot for us to gain from our system when we engage.
So a few things on that. So see, even when you said Rashida never backed off of her position on Palestine, when I posted the episode with Rashida, when this would be posted, that would have been a couple weeks ago. Even though her stance is very clear, you still have comments that were like, Rashida's too woke. Most of the hate comments that came on the episode were that Rashida's woke. Right? And I told Rashida this when she was here. This is what people think of you. You know, they think that Rashida went too far left. A lot of people's assumption. But what even I didn't even personally know about Rashida is that the work that she does on the ground and how she's very vigilant and trying to help people. It's simple as that. I was trying to look for a fancy word, but this is what you get out of that conversation with her, is that she's just trying to help people. And then she explained to me the things that she was doing, and I'm like, man, like, this is great work. Regardless of a position here that people might be like, oh, yeah, we don't like this position. And I think this is the issue. People tend to look at this Arab Muslim politician that is running, whether it was Abdullah is my earliest memory of it when I moved here. That was the first time I saw it. And they want him to get every single thing right. And he is not allowed to make a mistake. And when he does make a mistake, they're going to hang him. And clear as day, you know. And I think that's really the issue, is we forget that people like Abbas, people like Abdullah, people like Rashida, people like Mo that just got elected to Dearborn Heights, just regular people, you know. Abbas is probably going to make a mistake. Hopefully not, but let's say he makes a mistake.
100%.
People have to have that just to say that he's human, you know.
That's right.
We don't know what happened, what were the circumstances, what actually happened with him, and yeah, I don't think people are willing to say that. I think they just want to hang you on the first mistake that you do.
I also think you're right, that the way that the conversation happens in our politics, it's almost like we're watching a sports team. You know, oh well, you know, your team made a mistake or they fumbled the ball. You kick them while they're down. When really we should not lose sight of each of these people who are in this position. They're not just the individual people they are holding a position that can help our community. And so we should judge them not by whether we agree with 100% of the things that they say or think or not. We should judge them by, are they serving our community or not? And here's the example I like to give. There's probably about 50% of the time that I do not agree with my wife. And somehow I agreed to live in the same house with her for the rest of my life. Now, if that's how I feel about my wife, who's way smarter than me and a brilliant human being, and is also someone I disagree with sometimes, then why would I expect that a politician or any public servant who's occupying an office is someone I have to agree with 100% of the time? You don't have to agree with me if I am your state senator. What I have to do is when you call and say, hey, I need help. Hey, my relative is in jail or in prison, for example, and they're treating him inhumanely. He's not getting food. He's not getting water. I don't want to be judged by if you and I have the same exact idea about whatever the issue is. I want to be judged by, did I help you? Did I use the power of the pen that comes with being the state senator to write a letter saying, as the person who represents this guy's family, you better treat him humanely because everybody deserves water, everybody deserves food, even if they're in prison, right? Did I help you when you called and said you needed that help with that unemployment insurance, and I fought for you? Did I help you when you told me about the issue that your kid was facing in school, and it turns out it's something that we can address by introducing a bill, and I introduced that bill and fought for it and said Jaafar's kid needs this, and so this is important for our community. That's what we should be judging our politicians by whether they do the work, by whether they fight for us rather than fold, right? If the job was try to get as many people as possible to agree with you most of the time, then we would get politicians who don't do anything for us. And so what I want people in our area to understand is we shouldn't be trying to elect politicians who we agree with 100% of the time. We should be trying to elect people who want to serve our community, who are being clear about how they can serve our community. That's what I'm trying to do right now. And that's what I respect about the leadership of folks like you mentioned, like Abdullah and Rashida. You can agree with Rashida 100% of the time or not. You can agree with Abdullah 100% of the time or not. But I can guarantee you, if someone calls Abdullah's administration for help, or Abdullah personally, or someone calls Rashida's office for help, or Rashida personally, they're not asking you, hey, do you agree with me? No, they do that work. That's how I intend to lead.
Do you think people just don't know what you can help them with?
I think that's part of it. I think the vast majority of people don't really have on their radar what the difference between a state senator, a state representative, a city council member, like they're busy trying to provide for their families. They're busy trying to survive a very difficult world that we live in.
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So but that's why I think for those of us who are in this work, not all of us are in this work. I'm not a podcaster, okay?
Right.
I'm not in the podcasting space. I don't know the ins and outs of it, okay? I'm going to lean on you for that, Jaafar. But I'm a member of this broader community here in this area, and I am in politics and in the work of government. So it's my responsibility for you to lean on me of like, hey, you're running for state senate. What would that do for us? And I think that it's important that our community understand that who is in this seat matters, because we all pay state taxes. And the taxes we send to the state, there are people who have jobs in Lansing who get to decide where that money goes. And whether that money, and these are either our state senators or our state representatives, and whether that money is brought back here to our community to make investments in our local governments, in youth programming, like what we see, or mental health programming, like what we see folks like Access are doing or Hype is doing, right? To make investments in things like our roads, whether we have roads that are safe to drive on. I can't find a single person in our community who doesn't know personally either someone who was badly injured or lost their life as a result of how dangerous our roads are. Whether those investments are happening or not depends on who the person is in the seat and whether they're fighting for your community. And so for me, I'm running to be the most effective state senator in Lansing because I know how to use the process, the process of deciding what money goes where. It's called the appropriations process. I know how to work an appropriations process. Is what I did in Lansing when I worked on Rashida's team, so I did in DC when I was on Rashida's team and Andy's team and Corey's team. Work an appropriations process to get as much investment from the state as possible here, right here in Dearborn Heights, right here in Al Park, right here in Dearborn and in Taylor. That's what I know how to do. That's what I'm offering our community. So bringing the money home, that's part of it. Lifting up the issues that really matter to us, so that if something isn't working, if you're being treated unfairly by the system, we can either try to help you specifically, or if it's a system-wide problem, we can introduce a bill to try and make it into a law to change the system so that nobody has to experience that harm. And very importantly, in a state senator, you have someone who's an advocate, right? Someone who, if you're going through a situation and a state senator has a platform, right, where they're talking to the media or they're talking to people with power, they are lifting up your needs. They're not just concerned with what is helpful to them. And so this is, I think, a really important point on the issues that matter to our community. How I can be most helpful to our community. Let's say right now on any issue that, one issue that I've been hearing a lot about, especially recently after the really difficult loss in our community of Mr. Naeem, who was someone with special needs and who was lost and died in Dearborn Heights, is the issue of people with special needs, people who are on the autism spectrum, and whether or not they are taken care of by the community. There are laws, there are bills right now in Lansing that could help us alert the community when someone with autism or someone with special needs wanders and their family needs help finding them. We can actually pass a bill right now to make it so that we all get an alert when something like that happens, and we can find them easier, right? Whether that passes or not depends on if we have people in there fighting. And so for me, I can help by right now, okay, let's say this is a really important issue in our community. I can say, okay, I'm calling a community meeting. We should talk about this. That's one thing. But if I'm the state senator and I say, I'm calling a community meeting about this, all of a sudden it's a Senate meeting. You can open an investigation. I can write a letter and start an investigation into why there isn't more being done to help our families that are experiencing this level of pain, who need the support. And so there is a lot of power in each of these offices, whether it's a state senate office or a mayor's office or a state representative's office. There's power in each of these offices, and it's on us, on me, as someone who's running for state senate, to communicate, to take the questions from our community. Like, okay, well, what can you do for me? That's what we should be asking our people in our community who are stepping up to run for office. What can you do for me? Don't be shy to ask it. Unless they can explain to you exactly what the power of that office is and how it can help you and your family, then maybe they're not the right person to do it. That's where we need to start.
Detroit Perk is now officially open in West Dearborn. So here's what I want from you. Whenever you're craving a cup of coffee, whenever you're going out to spend some time with friends, to study or to work, make sure to stop by, congratulate them, and show your support. Because I truly believe that it's one of the most consistent and tasteful cups of coffees that you'll ever have. How many times have you gotten an idea and wanted to start something big, but the money part was always worrying you? I don't have enough money to start this business. I don't have enough money to pay off my debt so I can start something new. I don't have enough money to do these renovations around the house. That's not completely true. The walls of your home actually hold a lot of that value that you've been paying month after month for. And West Capital Lending has a product that is called the Home Equity Line of Credit, which doesn't need an appraisal. You get approved within minutes. You choose the rate and your term, and you can close in as little as 5 days. So imagine that little of a time frame and how much change can actually happen in your life. And all you need to do is click the link in the description to check it out and get approved. And now let's get back to the show. But is there actually a realistic path for a lot to change because of something that I want? If someone's listening to this and they actually think of something that they actually need, is there a realistic possibility that a law can be passed for an average need of an average person?
I think when we say the word law, maybe we get a little bit intimidated by it. Right?
Something big.
Something big. Who knows how to write a law, right? When I showed up on Capitol Hill, I had never worked on Capitol Hill or in Congress, didn't know anybody who'd ever worked there. And so I started thinking to myself, my God, am I qualified to be here? I don't know how to write a bill, right? What I learned very quickly is that the best ideas for how to change our system don't come from the people who live in the pie in the sky and know all the most sophisticated ways to write a bill. They come from the people who are experiencing how the system is not working for them. They come from the people who are experiencing the pain. Where, for example, I handled immigration as part of my portfolio, my policy portfolio for Andy Levin, Congressman Levin. When I was writing the bill to stop the deportations of Chaldeans that I told you about, of Iraqi Americans here in this community who were being deported by the Trump administration, there were certain things that I could write in there, right, that because I understood how the immigration system worked, and because I had that lived experience, because I experienced a certain pain, I was uniquely positioned to say, oh no, we should write it this way, not that way. For example, immigrants to this country go through a lot of paperwork. They go through a lot of vetting. They go through a lot of having to meet with immigration officer after immigration officer, right? So this was a specific bill about immigration that I was writing, and the question came up of like, okay, should we require 3 more forms for them to fill out, the people who want the relief that we were, to stop the deportations or not, right? Because I had the experience, I know just how many forms you have to fill out. We went through the immigration process. I remember every single new form that we'd get in the mail. We'd all be so worried, and my parents wouldn't know how to respond. And me and my sister would have to, do the translating and make sure, like, okay, are we filling this out right? Are we going to get in trouble if we don't say this the right way? We were going through the system, but it was also a little bit painful, to have to do that so many times, right? So, the decision in that bill, for example, of whether to require 3 new forms or whether to just to require 1 or none at all, right? That is a policy decision. right? The decision of, let's say I'm going to, I need food assistance. I don't have enough money for food, and whether or not you have to show 14 pay stubs and prove that you need this help, or whether or not you're believed as a human being, saying, okay, yes, you're entitled to food. Here's some food, regardless of whether or not you have the 14 pay stubs and 47, electric bills and 47 bank statements, right? Like what that looks like, what you have to, present in order to get the help that you need. Those are all policy decisions. And so for me, we have to dismantle the idea that you have to be some kind of policy genius in order to be able to help write a law. If you're someone who has tried to get something from our government and it didn't work for you, then you probably have a good idea of how it can be better. I'll give you another example. I don't think it makes sense that all of us should have to be requesting one prior authorization after another when our family members are just trying to access life-saving healthcare, right? When my mom was experiencing her cancer treatment, and I opened up the app one day and it said $150,000. I shouldn't have ever had to experience that. That's a matter of policy. I can go to my representative, to my senator, and say, hey, how can we change the system so that this never happens? Nobody experiencing cancer treatment should have to look at a $150,000 bill in the richest country in the world. This is a policy decision. And so I would urge our community members to speak up about the parts of the system that aren't working for them and talk to their elected representatives about it so that we can get it changed.
But see, even like with that, I feel like the vast majority of people don't want to look at a $150,000 bill.
Of course.
Especially when it comes to health. But why is it still not changed, for example? Why is the healthcare thing still a problem then?
I think it's an excellent question. I think this comes back in part to the conversation we were having earlier about how money functions in our politics. So the big pharmaceutical companies, the big health insurance companies, you can actually go online and look at your elected representatives, right? And see who they take money from. It's not always easy to access, but their candidate committee, for example, you can see, this is a federal elected official or a state elected official who takes money from the pharmaceutical companies. They take money from the big health insurance companies, right? Rest assured, if you take money from the people who make a lot of money off of the system being as broken as it is, you're not going to be part of the solution. You're not going to be allowed to vote that way. Otherwise, you will lose your seat. And so we have to be, I would say, committed to and persistent in insisting that our elected leaders stop taking the money from the biggest corporations, because it's ruining our politics and it's causing a lot of harm to people who should not be experiencing this level of harm in the richest country in the world.
I'll give you an example on the topic of Arabs and selling out. This happened when Mayor Amer Ghaleb of Hamtramck. And to be honest with you, all I have ever heard of him were good things. People speak highly of him. And then he was offered the position to be the U.S. ambassador to Kuwait. And then he advocated for Trump, and people connected those together, that he advocated for Trump because Trump offered him to be the ambassador of Kuwait. And then he went and stood in front of the Republicans, and they torched him, for past comments that he had put on Facebook and stuff like that. And then people look at him and be like, he sold out to Trump and it backfired on him. So there's kind of that's the only thing people were talking about in that period of time is, oh, look, he sold out. He told his community, he advocated for Trump just to get that ambassador seat, So I think that situations like that make people distrust the political system, although everything that you're saying makes total sense, and probably someone that is getting only one immigration form rather than 5 doesn't know that there are people like you that worked behind the scenes effortlessly to get that to only one paper. And I think that's a big issue, that you don't know the small blessings that come it would have been probably way worse if someone had not fought for these.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have examples of what happened to Amer. And I really don't know the details of the information. I'd like to have that conversation with him, like what exactly happened. But people's perception is, he went into politics. He advocated for Trump. He had his views. He was very well respected and loved. And now look what happened to him. This is what happens when you go into politics and you go deep into politics.
This is interesting to me because there are ways to do politics where you do what's politically right, and it also happens to be helping people. And I can't speak for Amer Ghaleb's experience, but I had a certain experience, not with the Republican Party, but with the Democratic Party, that makes me think, wow, you guys aren't very good at politics. In 2024, I was one of the people who was pushing the Democratic Party, who was in power at the time. They had the presidency and control of Congress. Hey, we need a ceasefire. Democrats want a ceasefire, right? And the voters, as a result of a lot of organizing on behalf of a lot of people, and as a result of the Palestinian people, experiencing an immense, unimaginable level of pain during the genocide, the voters here in this country woke up and said, oh yeah, no, we don't agree. We should stop sending the weapons. That doesn't make sense, right? Not just Arab or Muslim people. Everyone. I mean, like the polls show. What the Democratic Party did is, even though their voters had moved on this issue, they refused. They said, no, we're not going to do anything. And so I had the experience of being someone who is, working to help every single person in our community, but also as someone who's been working from within the Democratic Party, right? And my personal view is we should be everywhere. If your views align more with the Republicans, go do that. If your views align more with the Green Party, go do that. If your views align with the Democratic Party, go do that. But we need to be advocating for a better system from every institution in this country, right? So I've worked for Democrats in Congress, and so I was advocating from within that system. And I've had this conversation even with the current leaders of the Democratic Party. I looked the uppermost leader of the Democratic Party in a meeting in the eye and said, the Republican Party seems to be better than you guys at politics. I saw 2 mayors from my community very visibly engage with the Republican Party, and they were rewarded. They got ambassadorships to, different countries. Meanwhile, I saw a good number of folks from this community who were advocating for a very straightforward policy change that most of your voters wanted, and they were not only not rewarded, they were abandoned. They were not supported by the party with any kind of policy concession or any kind of movement that would actually save lives. So you guys should do this a little bit differently, And so for me, I'm not holding out hope that's one day the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the leaders of the Democratic Party, let's stick with the Democrats for a moment. I'm not holding out hope that the leaders of the Democratic Party one day wake up and say, I have to do the right thing. I'm not holding out hope for that. What I think is who controls the Democratic Party is really about who organizes to be in those seats. And so I'm not going to wait for someone to wake up to what the right thing to do to help the most people. I'm going to run and take those positions myself and give that power to the people, okay? Because when we leave those positions for the people in power and say, oh, there's no hope, they're gonna rig it anyways, then we let them continue hurting people, continue to being out of touch with people's pain, around healthcare, around education, around any one of the things that we care about. We let them continue being out of touch, and they get to control the institutions. And so my version of politics is, let's organize. Let's you and I together decide that we want a different system and take power away from the people who are failing our communities and give it to the people who are communicating very clearly about how they intend to serve. That's how I think about it.
Another example is what happened with the Uncommitted campaign, right? Because that was also one of those situations where maybe if you had pitched it with a group of friends they would have said, I don't think this will work.
Mm.
But, and obviously you were maybe the most major player in the Uncommitted campaign. So maybe you'll explain how that went about exactly. But that was a part where you look at that and be like, this is interesting. I never seen a movement like this before, right?
Yeah, so the Uncommitted campaign really, in my mind, was a strategy, an imperfect strategy, during an impossible moment. A moment of genocide necessarily is an impossible moment. And our political system is imperfect. Thankfully, there are still core parts of our system that are reminiscent of a democracy. I think the way money in our politics threatens our very democracy, the way money works in our politics threatens our democracy. But there are parts of our system that we can organize together around to make sure that democratically our voices are heard. And so the Uncommitted strategy really came about to try and reach those voters, like so many people in my own family, who not only were in touch with the humanity of Palestinian people experiencing a genocide, but also were so disgusted with a national politics that was prioritizing money for war over money for helping people. Okay, and so I think the greatest threat to our politics isn't whether people vote for one party or another. I think the greatest threat in our politics is people becoming so disillusioned that they don't want to engage in the system as at all. Because when you and me disengage, Jaafar, then the only people playing the game on the inside are the people who don't want what's best for our communities. And I think it's important that some of us are on the inside so that we can play a little bit of defense and sometimes play a little bit of offense. Because otherwise they get to run the ball up and down the court with no defense, right? And so the Uncommitted strategy came about as, okay, this is an impossible moment, but what's one way when we were going from 2023, Gaza was, in the headlines, the major news, CNN and others were covering it. And then it was about to become 2024, where behind the scenes, several of my colleagues were told directly, we're going to stop covering Gaza because in 2024, it's just going to be about Trump versus Biden, Trump versus Biden. And so for us, not only were we seeing that people were becoming so disgusted that they don't want to vote at all, and I think ultimately that's what ended up happening because the Democratic Party refused to move on the issue and refused to deliver a ceasefire. A lot of folks just stayed home, said, I don't want to vote, right? I understand that feeling, right? But what was also happening was we needed to make sure that as they were talking about Trump versus Biden, that they couldn't ignore this issue. So the Uncommitted strategy was we claimed the box on our ballot to say, okay, everybody who wants peace and who's against war and who's for human rights for everyone, including Palestinians and Israelis and everyone, right? You vote Uncommitted. Our goal was, let's get 10,000 votes. That was the margin of victory between Trump and Hillary back when she ran against him. We said, okay, if we can demonstrate that we've got this many votes, then they have to listen to us. We ended up getting over 100,000 votes here in Michigan. We ended up getting nearly 1 million votes nationwide. Okay, this is more votes than any of us imagined that our organizing would lead to. And these are voters who, honestly, the Democratic Party is losing touch with. And we demonstrated that by telling people the truth about what's at stake and what's possible, you can get them to vote, right? So that's what we're really good at. We can reach voters who the Democratic Party is letting down, right? But in that experience, the Democratic Party still didn't move. And I have a lot of theories now, reflecting back about what went wrong, what helped, what didn't. I also feel very clear about how we can grow the power of regular everyday people who want a different politics. Because I think one of the reasons why the leaders of the Democratic Party were able to ignore the Uncommitted movement's demands was when I personally was trying to negotiate and faced Vice President Harris herself and said, we need to talk to you about this. And she agreed to a meeting, and then that didn't end up happening. And when I was negotiating with her team, the reason why they kept brushing us off to the side ultimately is they're like, you're a leaderless movement, uncommitted. People voted uncommitted for all kinds of reasons. It wasn't just because of Gaza. You'll see. We'll still win this election.
They were that confident.
They were that confident. They were certain that Vice President Harris was going to win. But look at what's happened since. Okay, I think it's really interesting for us to consider as a community. Okay, and I'm not just, when I say as a community, I'm not just talking Arab and Muslim Americans. I'm talking about regular everyday people here in this area who want a different kind of politics. Look at what happened in the Zohran Mamdani experience. Zohran Mamdani, of course, was supportive of the Uncommitted movement, and there was a lot of ceasefire organizing that was happening in New York. Of course, he's been an advocate for Palestinian rights for a long time. But what Zohran Mamdani did was he ran very clearly on a set of issues. He won, and now the party has to negotiate with him. The leaders of the Democratic Party can't ignore him because people voted. He can say, I have 1 point whatever million voters who have me negotiating on their behalf, right? In our community, we need to elect people who are being very clear with us about what it is that they're going to fight for, and who can embody our interests, so that as the party statewide and as the party nationwide is wanting to come into our community and wanting our votes, for example, that we have elected leaders who can negotiate with them and say, hey, oh, you want votes in this area? I'm someone who got this many votes in this area. I have organizing infrastructure. I've knocked this many doors in this area. And people in this area need to know what you think about, you name the issue that we're prioritizing, right? So the way that we're going to grow our political power, I think, is by electing leaders who are honest with our community, who earn our community's trust. And then when the moment comes to negotiate with the governor, with the presidential candidates, whatever, we're well positioned to say, oh, no, you can't ignore Abdullah, you can't ignore, Abbas Alawieh. You can't, these are elected people through our system, and therefore you must negotiate with them. So I think one of the reasons, or one of the lessons out of the Uncommitted movement is we need to elect more champions for regular everyday people who see the humanity in everyone. And that will be, it won't change the system overnight, but it will be part of how we force unwilling institutions, sometimes like the Democratic Party. I've been a Democrat my whole life, right? But unwilling institutions to change. We have to force change. Change isn't going to happen on its own. We have to organize for it.
So they can't ignore you anymore. You kind of force their hand to sit down.
Of course. If I'm an elected representative and I say, I'm demanding a meeting with the campaign, they have to take that meeting because I'm an elected representative. I represent people in our democratic system.
They actually need you now.
They need you. But if they have ways of just saying, oh, you're not relevant. Oh, people voted Uncommitted for all kinds of different reasons. That was one of the ways that they undermined and stalled and ultimately, held on to a very despicable policy of supporting the genocide.
And that backfired big time because they ended up losing the election.
I think so. But I think also one of the things that I noticed is what I was experiencing as I was engaging the Harris campaign and urging them, hey, I'm talking to voters. We need you to change we need you to change your policy in order for us to be able to bring people along. And they refused outright. What I noticed after the election was it wasn't just me who was advocating for a ceasefire in that moment who they were ignoring. There were leaders in the Black community who were advocating for certain policy stances that were being ignored. There were leaders who were advocating for economic justice and changes in economic policy that needed to be changed. And the party line was, oh, no, the economy's never been better than under Biden. And ultimately, I think why the Democrats lost is that line that was reported that Biden told Harris that she stuck to. He said, not an inch of daylight. You're not allowed to show any difference from me. Not an inch of daylight. And so with that, I think people wanted change. People didn't want Joe Biden. And people wanted to really hear what Kamala Harris, would have done. And I really believe, because I talk to people who are very close to her, I really believe that she wasn't the same as Biden. I'm not saying that she would have freed Palestine, okay? But people very close to her told me, hey, her policy is different than this. Even Senator Gary Peters came out at the time and said, I know Vice President Harris holds a different policy on Israel-Palestine than Joe Biden does, and she should come out and say what her vision is. I think she should have done that. I don't think we ever got it. I think the people who took over her campaign were Biden's people, and they didn't let her define herself on her own terms. And so the party got the outcome that came about.
Do you think that people won't trust in her even if she tries to run again because of what happened? Especially, I know she came out with the book. I'm not sure about the contents of the book exactly, but she's been saying publicly that she would have done things differently if it was up to her. Do you think that would have, like, this is a permanent thing? She can't recover from this.
I'm not sure.
Why would I trust you
Yeah.
if you ran a whole campaign wanting to be the president of this country, saying one thing, and then after the campaign saying, I actually thought the opposite of what I was running on. So how can I trust you to run the country if you're able to lie to me throughout the campaign?
Right. No, I think that's a totally legitimate point. I think in 2028, what we're going to see is not just Kamala Harris. I don't know. I'm following it just like you are, right? It's possible that she'll jump in. I think there's plenty of other folks who will jump in too. What I don't want for our communities here in this area is to just get obsessed with the horse race of it all. Oh, Harris versus Buttigieg versus Newsom. Of course, that's fun conversation for us to have. Let's have it. But what I do think that we need to be focusing on is, what are our interests? When these candidates come, what are we going to be asking of them? What are our red lines? What are our demands? What are our asks? And how are we communicating? And how are we going to organize right now to elect leaders who will be well positioned to negotiate on our behalf during those moments, right? And so I think it's very reasonable for us to have asks around how our communities, get access to healthcare, how our communities get access to childcare, how our communities get access to, any one of these things, and yes, also how our communities get access to some sleep at night, knowing that their family overseas isn't getting bombed by their own country. I think that's a very, very fair thing for us to be thinking about, and that's certainly something that is on the minds of a lot of people in this community, just given how many folks are directly impacted. And so, yes, the questions about Kamala and can she be trusted and not. To me, I don't think there's any one candidate who can be trusted fully. My trust is in the people. My trust is in us coming together and having the difficult conversations about what is in our interests. My trust is in showing your work. Okay, like this is what we asked you for, Kamala. And I think I have a friend, Ali, who was describing, political maturity in this area, and he was like, especially immigrant communities early on when we come here, we just ask for some crumbs. And then eventually, as communities mature, they ask for the meat. There are a lot of immigrant communities here in this area, including many in the Arab American community, right? Who they're not just asking for the meat anymore. No, we want the sauce. Okay, so like that's the level of political maturity that we have to step up to understand our power. Our power is in how many votes we can organize and say we need a specific thing. And our power is immense, especially because we happen to live in Michigan and it matters for the presidential election. And so we need to be having that conversation now about what would it look like if our community was thriving, if our small businesses could achieve their maximum potential, if our kids could get the childcare that they need, for example. Right now childcare costs more for young families than their own mortgage sometimes, right? So these are the conversations we should be having now and coming up with the demands now so that we can be asking for it in 2028 or anytime someone's asking for our vote. I think those conversations happen to be a little bit more interesting to me than can Kamala Harris be trusted with a specific thing or not. I trust the people.
Yeah. And that's what Rashida was saying, that you can't blame the people for voting for Trump. If he ran a campaign that people thought they should vote for, then that's what happened. And the Democrats should have probably done a better job. I wanted to ask from on a personal level, is it difficult running because in the politics game, you have to try to win over people that don't look like you, that read your name and be like, weird name, I'm not sure if I should vote for him. And on the other hand, you also have some of your people that say, oh, sell out, we're not going to vote for him. You know, so it's weird because you have to win out your people, but also people that don't look like you. Is there pressure do you feel that?
I hear the tension that you're talking about.
It's double-edged in a way, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because for me, I'm running to be our next state senator, not because I think our next state senator should be someone with my last name or someone of my ethnicity or my faith. I'm running to be our next state senator because my training is specifically in how to deliver for our communities. This is what I know how to do, and I want to help. And I want to help everyone, regardless of who they are. The message that I started my campaign with was, and this is true of me personally, family is everything to me. And I want to serve every single person in our community like they're family to me. That's how I feel about it. So for me, it's really strange when I'm running on my record, I'm running on having passed dozens of bills in the House of Representatives, having had things that I wrote be signed into law by the President of the United States, having started a congressional staff association in Congress, having negotiated at the highest levels with the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker of the House and the White House, right? That's the record I'm running on. And then as soon as I announce, the first article that's written about my candidacy isn't former Chief of Staff Abbas Alawieh, or organizer who helped mobilize 1 million votes, Abbas Alawieh. No, it's Arab American candidate Abbas Alawieh. Of course, I'm proud of my heritage. There's no denying whether or not I'm Arab American. But I don't see that being written about a lot of others, right? A lot of folks don't get white American or Italian American or whatever it is candidate written about them. But for me, because I am someone with my ethnic background, all of a sudden I'm just limited to that. And so I'm going to do what I need to do to get the message out to every person in this community that I'm running to represent about who I am as a person. I am not my ethnicity. I am the person that I am. I am the grandson that I am. I'm the brother that I am. I am the public health professional that I am, having my degree in public health, my master's degree. I am the legislative expert that I am, having worked in Congress. That is what I need to be communicating to our community. And honestly, I can only do so much. You know, I need people in the community who are hearing this to tell someone, hey, there's this guy named Abbas. Yes, he happens to be Arab American, but that's not why he should be elected. He should be elected because he knows how the system works and he wants to help people. That's what I'm running on. And yes, on the other end of it, there are folks who are like, well, you know, aren't you a sellout for doing this work? And that's where I come back to. We have to be specific about what it is that we're running to do. I'm running to help people by using the power of a Senate office to help any person in our community who I represent. There's real power in that. There's real service that is on the table there. There's real money that we can get from Lansing to invest in our communities there. We shouldn't leave it on the table. That's why I'm running.
Does that bother you?
Yeah, I think part of what's wrong in our politics is that we treat people, and you know, there are many reasons for this, but we treat people, especially political actors, based on a specific identity, you know, the identity politics, rather than based on the substance of what they're saying they're going to do and what they have done. And so it bothers me not just on a personal level. It bothers me in general. Anytime we're talking about someone and boxing them into just one thing. I am not one thing. I'm many things, as we all are, and we deserve the full professional respect in any field that we're in, including in politics. We deserve the full professional respect that would be afforded to anyone. So when they try to box us in and say, "Oh, you're just the Arab American podcaster," I happen to think, Jaafar, that your podcasting capabilities and your podcasting potential and your podcasting reach isn't just relevant to Arab American ears. I think you're relevant, and the human stories that you're capturing are relevant to anybody who's interested in a human story, right? And so this is one of the ways that like folks just try to box you in, like, oh, this is your potential. You're just the Arab American, you know. And then And for me, of course, there's no question. I have too many Fairuz songs memorized in order for me not to be proud to be the Arab American individual that I am. But also, I deserve to be respected as the public servant that I am, the political operative that I am, the organizer that I am. And when folks try to box me or anyone in like that, I don't think that's fair.
If we're gonna fast forward now to you winning that seat,
Do you think I'm gonna win, Jaafar? Inshallah.
I think you are.
I appreciate you.
Um,
August 4th, okay,
August
baby.
4th. What's that first phone call to your grandmother gonna be like?
Every time I talk to her now, she's telling me that she's praying a lot about it. It's caught me off guard a little bit, because stepping out to run it feels a little bit different than any other professional thing that I've done. Whereas before, I'm working behind the scenes. Now I'm running to be a public official, and what people think of me or my ideas, and it's all very public. And the part that I didn't anticipate is that includes my own family, right? That my grandmother is seeing these videos of me out here, saying the speeches and trying to convince people, and it's changed the things that she prays about. That's really special to me. And so I think when I talked to her after the election, whatever the outcome is, certainly when we win, we're going to manifest this. And I feel really confident that if we do the work that we have to do, if we knock the doors, if we make the calls, we're going to win this thing and grow our political power and influence in Lansing and statewide, right? But that phone call for me, regardless of the outcome, genuinely is it's going to be gratitude for the cover of prayer. I think there's real power in a grandmother praying for her grandson, in any elder praying for any one of us who, inshallah, if all things go well, we are going to outlive them. Their hope for the future is literally embodied in us. It's going to be a message of gratitude. It's going to be thank you for protecting me with your prayers. I think her prayers are protecting me as I'm doing this.
What you said is very interesting. What caught you off guard is her prayers changing.
My grandmother prays a lot. I'll show you some of the WhatsApp voice notes. But she has these every morning, and I have video of her doing this. Every morning she wakes up, she pulls out her phone, and she does a video, she does an audio note. Let's say you're someone in her life. She'll go through and it's usually the same exact prayer that you get every morning. And she'll send like 50 different personalized prayers, okay? God protect your dad and your mom. And, when I got engaged and then married, and your wife and her family. And she'll go through. And now the things that, it's God protect you while you're running the election. God make you victorious in what you're doing to help people. The fact that she sees that, I don't know if she is even aware of just how big that permission that she gave me when she was like, I want you to be there. You don't got to come back and live with me, right? The path that sent me on, to be open to working in Congress, to be open to, doing this work of fully being and serving here. I don't think she connects that to this prayer that she's giving me that I win this election, but it's so directly connected in my mind and my experience. And so I'm very lucky. Her prayers have changed, and that's a good thing for me. I think she has a direct line to the power that to the power that is.
It's weird because, in a way, you want that permission to pay off. You want to make her proud. I'm pretty sure she was already proud, but we tend to be like that when we're striving for something, when we're working on a project. we really think, okay, is our mom and dad proud?
Mm. Mm.
Are they gonna be proud when I tell them, hey, I did 1, 2, 3? And for you, it's calling Tata and be like, Tata,
We
we did it.
Yeah. 100%. And I think any of us who have parents who sacrificed for us, not just immigrant parents, but any parent who we witnessed, any elders, grandparents, we witnessed give something up in order for us to get to where we are. What my grandmother gave up is that company, our presence around her, that drives you.
Do you
It's
think
like
that
it has to
affected
be
her?
worth it.
Do you think that affected her?
Oh, I know it affected. You sit down for 3 minutes with my grandmother, she'll still, and they left me, and I couldn't believe that they left. My grandmother is, she's a poet too, in her own right. She has a lot of old poetry memorized, but she also wrote poetry when we left that she still remembers about how, about the feeling of separation and how difficult it was. And so she'll still pull those poems out and, not out physically, but she says them. And so, of course, it affected her. But I think also, I know that her desire for us to be the best people that we are and here and be the best versions of ourselves here and make this country the best version of itself that it can be here. I think that's something she wants, genuinely. I believed her when she said, I'm watching this orange guy and they need help over there, right? So I take comfort in the idea that I'm doing something that she's proud of.
Well, Abbas, I hope you go all the way. I hope you get that seat. This is a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I'm very grateful to you, Jaafar. Thank you for lifting up the stories of our community. It's a real privilege to experience that specific leadership that you're offering, that creating the space and also asking the questions that maybe otherwise wouldn't be asked. And this has been just such a lovely experience. I'm very grateful to you.
I appreciate you, my brother.